begin here. At least 30 people were killed when an Air India plane bound for London with 242 people on board crashed minutes after taking off from India's western city of Ahmedabad earlier today. Authorities expect the death toll to rise, and the plane was headed for Gatwick Airport, south of the British capital. The plane crashed near a medical college in a residential area, with rescue workers saying that at least 30 to 35 bodies have been recovered from the site and that more people were still trapped. The passengers included 217 adults, 11 children, as well as 2 infants. So of them, 169 were Indian nationals, 53 were Britons, 7 Portuguese and 1 Canadian. The plane is a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner. Let's bring you the very latest now. We speak to Neha Poonia, who is in New Delhi in India, to give us the very latest. Very good evening, good afternoon to you rather, and thank you so much for your time. It crashed shortly after takeoff. Do authorities know what happened?
That's going to be the focus of an investigation that will now be conducted by civil aviation authorities. But there's significant shock and trauma here in India over what is now looking to be one of the worst aviation tragedies the country has seen in recent years. We do know that shortly after takeoff on Thursday afternoon local time, the pilot of this aircraft that was bound towards the UK, supposed to land at the Gatwick airport, issued a Mayday call, and after that air traffic control teams say they were unable to make contact with the aircraft. We have seen videos posted online that show the final moments before the crash happened, where you can see that the plane is clearly struggling to climb higher, to gain height. Flight tracking apps have shown that it only reached a height of about 600 feet before it crashed into a heavily crowded and populated area adjacent to the airport in the city of Ahmedabad, which is in western India. We have since seen more pictures coming out from that crash location. We can see the debris of the plane, the charred remains, as well as what appears to be the tail of the plane sticking out of what is a residential building. A bulk of that impact of the crash happened in a building that housed trainee doctors, and currently officials say that rescue and emergency efforts are focused on that area. There was a huge plume of black smoke that was seen soon after the crash happened, and authorities on the ground are saying that that smoke was so thick that it delayed rescue operations as well.
And Neha, with the health minister, for example, in the country saying that many people died in the crash, and when you look at the tally, for example, of the passengers that were on the flight, expected to be on the flight and headed to London, do we know as far as, the death toll right now? Have things changed, or are we still seeing the same numbers as this morning?
Details are still coming in, and authorities have repeatedly been saying that their focus right now is emergency efforts, and that's what they're dedicating their energy and focus on. They have set up a helpline number to help families and relatives of passengers and crew who were on that flight. There were 242 people on board. 169 were Indian nationals. There were 53 British nationals, 7 Portuguese and 1 Canadian national as well. Apart from the 10 cabin crew members. Hospitals around that area have been talking about how the bodies that have been brought in were so charred that they were beyond recognition. Some police officers saying it's unlikely that there will be any survivors, but we're still waiting to hear from the Civil Aviation Ministry on that. What's also important is that this has crashed in a residential area. There were reportedly 200 people who were using that particular residential building where the plane crashed as a residence. So it remains to be seen how many casualties or injuries have been reported there, but certainly the scope of this tragedy quite significant, given that this crash happened so close to the airport and saw the plane landing in a densely populated residential area in western India.
And what has been the reaction of the people on the ground? Because you hardly can expect that this would happen, and if it does happen, plane. One can only imagine the shock and horror that is currently taking place in that particular area right now.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, when news first started circulating of this crash, there were videos being posted online, and many were saying perhaps this is fake news, perhaps it's a deep fake or a AI generated video, because aviation disasters in India's history have happened, but nothing like this in recent years, and there's significant shock and trauma associated with it. Families of passengers who were on board that aircraft were telling local media that they've been struggling to get information. There was obviously a lot of worry about the extent of the crash, and details of the extent of the tragedy only becoming clearer in the last few hours or so. But immediately in the aftermath of that crash, there was a lot of questions about whether this was true or not, and how many people were hit, and what the impact was likely to be. But it has led to some questions about aviation safety in India, given that this was a 787 Dreamliner, an aircraft that has so far not had a history of crashes like this. The probe will now need to look at what happened. Aviation experts have been talking about how potentially there could have been a bird hit or an engine failure, but all of this, of course, in the realm of speculation. Only recovery of those black boxes will now tell us what happened in those minutes between takeoff and the plane crashing.
Neha Poonia, thank you so much for that update. SABC News correspondent, to stay with this particular story, and we